uzongilana. Ufuna ini? Oh no. Sorry.
This is number 8. Number 8.
Ngicela ungibonela yini? Sithando sami. Ashifoni. Bombona le nje akunikeza ifoni le. Uzoyithatha. Oh, ngibheka wena. Ifoni yami uzoyishiya phi? Oraselenga. Ngimele usathe ezifiyo nje. Ngicela lo ntombazane lo la. Usithi ngibone.
These things people get called up. You can just start at the front.
Yeah. Uzokunikeza mase hamba. Ndiyandawa kwena ngithuka ukuthi ngithe yini kodwa uzobafonela ngoba inamba yabo ikhona. Ithi silindeke. Abantu vele isikhathi kanti kumele abanye.
Angahla.
Good morning, everyone. It's a delight to see the faces in front of me, some familiar. I'm Tian Spelse. I'm the Executive Director of TWIMS, and it's really an honor to have our second breakfast of the year. And when it came over my desk, I was quite fascinated because on that same week, I received the Economist article from January talking about entrepreneurship in Africa. And the heading is quite provocative. Africa have too many businesses, but too little business. Meaning there's so many small entities out there in Africa, but we don't upscale. And I think this is coming in the right time. Our previous seminar, we're talking about industrial policy, and one of the debaters was quite adamant, it's only big business that can increase the growth and the employment for Africa. What that gentleman forgot, somewhere those businesses have started from a very small entrepreneur. And what we try to do is with TWIMS, is we want to provide the skills, the management capabilities to future entrepreneurs in the manufacturing sector so that we can actually then upscale these small entities into the big business world where the ecosystems, the productivity can grow and everybody can benefit from that. So in a nutshell, what is TWIMS? It's a Toyota Vessels Institute for Manufacturing Studies. We are providing formal education in the MBA, postgrad diploma field, but we're also providing short courses specific to the manufacturing electives, speaking to the management capabilities that's required for these small companies as well as the larger ones to upskill them into the larger ecosystems that's so dearly required at this point of time. I would like to welcome everyone for this seminar. I'm going to hand over to Mumugeni Notlovu. He's the Ilovo Head of Research for African Trade, and he will take the proceedings from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Pelsa, and welcome everyone to this KZN book launch of the book Rising from the Township, Inspiring Stories of South African Entrepreneurs. It's my pleasure to welcome you here in person at the Dr. Johan van Zyl Auditorium at TWIMS. And we're also broadcasting live on YouTube, so welcome to our online audience as well. It's my pleasure to be the moderator of two panel sessions that we'll have to celebrate this great book that has been written. Just to take you through the format, so our first panel discussion will be titled The Story of the Book and the Lessons for Entrepreneurs. And I'll be joined by the co-authors of the book, that's Dr. Stephen Zwane, the other co-author, Yamkela, Khoza, Tywakadi, and of course, one of the entrepreneurs who's been profiled in the book, that's Rita Mazwane, who will be part of the session. That will take us to around just after 9 o'clock. Then we'll break for a brief intermission and invite a second group of panelists, which I'll be moderating. And those will include another one of the entrepreneurs who has been profiled in the book, Mr. Ntutsugo Shezi. And we'll also invite delegates from eThekwini Municipality, Mr. Peter Gilmore and Ms. Nonko Mtsembu, who will be taking us through a panel discussion around bridging the gaps, government support for small businesses. So then that will then take us to 10 o'clock, and we'll have some refreshments and networking thereafter. So to open up this session of the book, I wanted to just give my own understanding and reading of the book. Firstly, I was very moved by a quote that comes in at the beginning of the book that says, this is not just success stories, it transcends mere success stories of entrepreneurs. It's a reflection of the resilience, creativity, and ingenuity that characterizes entrepreneurship in marginalized communities. And I think that's such a special way of basically speaking about how this book has been put together. It's obviously touching on the topic of township entrepreneurs and profiling of 10 different stories of entrepreneurs from different generations, but and coming from different townships across the country. But basically focusing on their stories and what are the lessons and challenges that they've had, And we have a chapter where we also then speak to the key themes of the book and basically an academic summation of the book, which we'll talk about a bit later. Why is this important? I think Professor Pelsa started to touch on these issues. So firstly, the issue of entrepreneurship is important to us in South Africa because it addresses the issue of unemployment. We understand that we're currently sitting at a broad-based unemployment level of 42%, if you include the people who have basically given up on working, which is a huge percentage of the population. And so entrepreneurship becomes a channel to alleviate poverty and unemployment. But also importantly, it becomes a channel in which you can create more businesses to actually expand the employment rates in the country. A second important feature of this book in particular is the fact that as TWIMS, we recognize the role of the symbiotic relationship between large corporate businesses and small businesses. So one of the things that will come through in the discussion and the features is how is it that the relationship exists as a symbiosis rather than just seeing small business as a survivalist enterprise. And of course, the transition from being survivalist to commercial, I think, is an important one, and one that really challenges a lot of us in terms of how do we actually get these businesses to move from just being very, very sort of low income survivalist enterprises to being commercial and in some cases internationally competitive businesses. So, and the last part of it, which I must also selfishly declare, the reason why we're hosting it here is because we're proudly KZN. And we wanted to claim some of our entrepreneurs who come from KZN. So these stories are not just stories South Africa, but some of these stories actually speak to the townships that are here in KZN. So what a perfect opportunity to really share these stories with the broader community. Let me, without further ado, then introduce my panelists. Firstly, I'll be having a brief discussion with the co-authors, Dr. Zwane and Yamkela. Dr. Stephen, welcome to TWIMS. Welcome to Durban. Would you like to introduce yourself and your background?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And thank you for such an amazing introduction of the book. KZN, thank you for having us. TWIMS, thank you for having us. It's really an exciting time for us to be telling stories of something that we believe is just at the right time to try and change the discourse and address some of the key issues that we as a country are addressing. My name is Stephen Zwane. I graduated from the University of Zululand, and I'm so happy to see some of our colleagues here, Tywakadi here, who I went to university with. And for me, I consider myself a KZN person, maybe by schooling, but also everywhere I show up and I speak to people, they surmise that I'm from KZN, so can please adopt me as being from here. I will take Ngwelezane and be a Zululand person to be where I'm from. I'm a lecturer, senior lecturer at the Gordon Institute of Business Science, and my research for my doctorate was on the role of entrepreneurship in driving entrepreneurship action amongst the youth. And to a certain extent, this is an extension of that research in terms of what that is about. But I grew up in a place called Takakral, Amersfoort in Mpumalanga, a rural village. And then I was raised for my schooling in a township called Dobsonville in Soweto. So I trace my roots in the township. I think one of the most fundamental things is that I look at myself as somebody who has been enterprising along the journey and throughout life. And that's why one of the chapters here, which is chapter 9, is my story that says you should not have turned out this way. And in there you understand what do I mean that I've been enterprising throughout my journey. So it's really an amazing opportunity. And maybe lastly, I've been in banking for about 20 years. I'm a banker. It's quite funny that entrepreneurs struggle with financials and finances. And there are so many of us that exist, and we're one of the premier industries in our sector. So I think for me, I'm looking forward to just deliberating and just discussing with everybody on the topic at hand. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Stephen. I mean, can you talk a bit about what inspired you to want to put this book together? So I understand there's the PhD element, but of course, you know, there's no obligation for you to take that PhD
Absolutely.
research and put it into a book. So what inspired you to make this step of publishing this into a book?
One of the main things that inspired me about the book is that since 2004, I was challenged to contribute back to society, and the challenge was that when I grew up and finished matric, the prospect of being anything was not there, because I was surrounded by a lot of people who have had matric but they've never amounted to anything. And I was out there looking for jobs and opportunities, and I realized that the task of a young person coming from the township, facing up with esteemed professionals looking for a job, they already have a disadvantage, and one of the disadvantages is confidence. They just don't have the confidence to tell the story, and also then language comes into play. And I thought, for me, what can I do to contribute so that less and less of people like me have a challenge of life prospects just because they can't speak the English language, or they don't believe in themselves, or the surrounding does not enable them to become who they want to become. So 2004, I started a Saturday school that was just teaching grade 11s to be confident. 21 years this year, we've taught over 20,000 young people to be confident. So what are the lessons we've learned about being confident? If you're coming from the township, we learned that all they need is the opportunity to know that there is more to life. And more to life is about leadership skills, and then also about working in teams and others, which is the entrepreneurship side. So consistently every year, whenever we do a pre-session assessment, we ask them, do you know anyone who's an entrepreneur? 3 out of 10 would know who's an entrepreneur. Do you have entrepreneurship conversations? Maybe 1 out of 10 will have some form of entrepreneurship conversations. And then when we look at it, we realize that role modeling is a big gap amongst young people. So we can only teach this community that we teach, but what about the rest of the other people? And I think the book then came in as an idea to close the entrepreneurship role modeling gap. We are so quick to go for stories of refined entrepreneurs, ultra successful entrepreneurs. Young people cannot relate to those people. They want to relate to someone that looks like them, that is still struggling and hustling and still moving forward. So this book therefore became what we're trying to do, and saying, what if we profiled 10 entrepreneur stories and guarantee every young person, every entrepreneur, every business person who wants to transition into entrepreneurship, every entrepreneur that's trying to grow their business, give them 10 strategies, 10 stories, 10 strategies that they can relate to. The battles of the entrepreneurs that are in this book are real. You've seen your aunt struggle, you've seen your uncle struggle, you've seen a relative struggle, you've seen somebody struggle, you've seen an entrepreneur close a business, you've seen an entrepreneur open another business. So these stories are about closing that. So maybe last part on the education side. When I was doing my PhD, I'm just newly a new doctorate graduate. So
congratulations.
Thank you, very new. If you had asked me while we were at school, Longoye, if I would ever end up being a doctor, PhD, I would have said no ways, not for people like me. So one of the things we did in this book was to say, in my research, was to take a longitudinal view of my research for the last 10 years. And I asked myself, if at all we trained young people since 2004 to be entrepreneurial, maybe have an entrepreneurship mindset, what has been the impact over the period? And we found that if you teach somebody anything to do with entrepreneurship, they are most likely to pursue education up to postgraduate studies. So which about 40% of our graduates have postgraduate qualifications. 98% go on and have an undergraduate qualification. And we realized that actually being entrepreneurial minded is a thirst for knowledge and for growth. And then the second thing that we learned was that if they have an opportunity to be entrepreneurs, they will take it tomorrow. So the entrepreneurship intention is about 98%. But what was interesting was, have they moved from intention to action? we realized that only 11% would move to action. So 98%, I want to be an entrepreneur, only 11% take the plunge. Now, the numbers for me are exciting because the country, South Africa, has been battling to move beyond 10.2% of entrepreneurship action. So meaning if we just sprinkle entrepreneurship education in the lives of our young people, the propensity for them to create businesses, to learn, to grow, and be something are much higher. And then we can create the economy we need. We can address generational poverty. We can address youth unemployment. So this is a book where we're saying is a gift to the young people, to the people in this country that want to be part of the change. The change that says pursuing a job is no longer a guarantee anymore. Alternative strategies must be applied, and we're hoping this is an alternative strategy. So that's where we're coming from again.
Excellent. And just to summarize, you're not only an author of the book, but you also are an entrepreneur in your own rights. Speaking to your experiences there at YLED, the Youth Leadership Entrepreneurship Development that you've established, focusing on grade 11 students. So, this book's just, the authors are not only storytellers, but they also have lived an experience of entrepreneurship, which is, at that point, I want to also introduce another one of our co-authors, Yamkela. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
To KZN. Welcome to TWIMS. So you yourself, Yamkela, are a publisher. You've published over 15 books, some of which are in curricula, have been taken up by the Department of Basic Education. So large expertise in writing. Please tell us about your partnership with Stephen on this book, and also your entrepreneurship journey, opening up Blank Page Publishers. Please share.
Awesome. Thank you so much, firstly, Mbongeni, for having us here. One of our, in fact, not even one, our biggest dream as rising from the township is to be in every business, in every institution, in every school, in every township, in every rural area. So I usually say that this is a book, but it's more than a book, it's a movement. We want to touch a lot of people. So being a TWIMS is such an honor. It is a testament to what we are actually trying to do with this book. So thank you so much for having us. I don't have any claim to or any roots from KZN, rather than the fact that I'm just a Zulu girl who didn't grow up in KZN. But I think that will help and make me feel welcome in the space. But just a bit of a background on my side. So my background is in publishing and communications. And like you said in your brief introduction, I have written and published over 15 books, different genres, and I've published other people's works. I've lost count on how many books I've published for other people as well. And I'm mentioning this so that I can go to my next point, which is in everything, in every publishing house that I've been part of, and in every book that I've published, I've always felt that there's this gap that we are not filling, and that gap is publishing books that Africans can identify with, that they can relate with. But not only that, but books that can uplift them, for them to move from where they are to and take the next step and the other and the other. And so we started Blank Page Books in 2020 to fill that gap, right? And obviously when you're starting a business as an entrepreneur, you think you know what you're doing, and it keeps changing until we landed on a strategy that says we are only publishing books where there's a gap. And so when Stephen came to me March 2024 and introduced the concept of this book and told me that he's thinking of a book about entrepreneurs that are coming from the townships and rural areas. Either they are born there and now building their businesses outside of the township, or they are still in the townships and building their businesses in the townships. And in that case, for example, a busy corner, which is Imbizo Shisanyama by Zwane. And for this book to actually inspire and give strategies to entrepreneurs that are saying, who do I look up to? And for me, this was a no-brainer. This was a book that is needed, and it's doing exactly that. So these 10 entrepreneurs are people, like Stephen said, that we're not talking about people who have these big conglomerates. These are the people that have built something that is now starting to be an international brand. Some of them are already international brands, but they are accessible. And I think one of the things that we are trying we're trying to bridge a gap of access, you know, that books should be accessible. One doesn't need to drive from the township to a posh suburb to a bookstore to get a book, but that we take the book to the people through these dialogues that we are having here at TWIMS, but in the townships as well, and in the areas as well. So this is what the book is about, and more, obviously. Yeah.
And what a beautiful partnership it's been, and thank you for putting these stories together and sharing that knowledge. You know, you spoke about the fact that some of these businesses are well known and iconic, and that leads me to introduce into the discussion Zwane. Welcome, Zwane, back to KZN, and welcome to TWIMS. Zwane is the owner of the iconic busy corner, Imbizo Shisanyama. It's Mbisa. I've been there myself on many occasions, especially on a Sunday afternoon. It's a very popular place to attend. So it's a pleasure to meet you for this discussion. Please, tell us a bit about yourself and your experiences building up to developing Imbizo Shisanyama.
No, Sanbonani, thank you for having us. And funny that normally when I start, I always say, this is Rita Zwane coming from KZN Umlazi originally, and I'm here now. Yes, but I left KZN many years ago. I've been, should I say, in business or in entrepreneurship journey for the past 40 years. The reason I'm saying for the past 40 years, my mother instilled that or cultivated that entrepreneurship culture when I was still very young. As a result, by the time I left KZN, going to Joburg, I was just looking for opportunities. What I like to share mostly about myself is that, getting into the township, it's a space that is, for someone who's looking from outside, who has not been in the township, it's a space that is very complicated when it comes to building a business. But for me, it wasn't much of a challenge because from selling sweets, I already know how to put 1 cent on top of another and then make a rent. There was a saying that I used to like a lot when I go with my mother to the town and buy those smaller cokes, I think it's 300 mils back in the days. And I would see, especially it was mostly Indian shops, and I would see a young boy or girl behind the till, saying, when you want maybe a baker, 1 baker and chips. And I would look at that shop and look at that young girl and think, you know what, later in life, and I'm thinking that this is something that, when it's instilled, when you are young, it can grow and have an opportunity to become something one day. I like what you just said, Kajeni, when you were talking about the relationship, before I just come to introducing myself properly, about the relationship between the big and the small businesses. Mina getting into a space of Ushisanyama, I look at it today and see the contribution that the space have done in South Africa, because it speaks to the entire value chain of Ushisanyama, starting from the agricultural industry, right up to where music is introduced. And there was a platform that I wanted to create for arts and culture as well. How I saw that, allow me to just use this example. When one day at a busy corner in Gauteng, Tembisa, and I wanted something in the industry, in fact, in food and beverage industry, that will speak to our culture, heritage, and identity. And I decided to call people that were coming from KZN. Already they traveled to, yes, they traveled to, it was home to, not home to Kuti in the day, you'll remember Oshino Mtikala.
Yes.
And they traveled, yes, from Durban to Gauteng. It speaks to tourism. There's local tourism already right there.
Sure.
And from that point, everyone else comes to Heritage Day. Then they began to celebrate it. They began to see where can we find it. Some of them come as far as Abo KZN. So I'm just giving you a background of why I got into Ushisanyama. Obviously, I disrupted this sector here. Because in the days, there was state houses. Ushisanyama was something that was not very off.
Yes.
And yeah, so for me, it's been all those years and all the challenges that have, especially operating in the township.
Yeah.
Some of those challenges, when you talk about the zoning spaces, it becomes a challenge. But at the same time, what makes you keep going? So in a nutshell, that is who is Zwane. I went to school in Isubusisiwe in Umbumbulu, in the district. And when I got to Joburg, obviously I had to do short courses like secretarial course and all that. And a few years later, I decided to start and open my own business, which is the famous business corner. You're quite correct. Famous business corner
World
in
famous.
Ushisanyama. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Just to come back to you, and especially hearing this great story of Zwane and operating in the township. Stephen, the last chapter talks about this effectuation theory, which is more of the academic side, where you try and piece these stories together and speak about key lessons that can be taken away. Could you share those lessons with us?
Absolutely. So thanks, Zwane, for sharing the story. It's so beautiful. I can't get tired of it. It's important that we educate as an educator, and I thought I took the opportunity to excuse me, to answer the so what question for everybody reading the book, just for your benefit. When you do get the book, it will be page, because we do want to encourage you to grab the book, to page 314. It's called A Short Class Before We End. There are a couple of things that we are learning about entrepreneurs. So there's a theory that was formed back in 2001 called effectuation theory by a renowned scholar from India. She sought to understand what are the characteristics that make entrepreneurship or entrepreneurs thrive. And she came up with the effectuation theory. When I read the effectuation theory, I started to see that township economy is defined in similar vein as the effectuation theory. So here are some of the things that are part of the effectuation theory. Number one is that township entrepreneurs start with what they have. Whatever they have, if they've got hands to make fed cakes, they'll make fed cakes. And they'll make cakes themselves and sell them. And they can make their own acha, and they can weld if they can weld. They start with what they have. And I think for me, I started to piece and see the same things about the entrepreneurs contained in Rising from the Township. Zwane started with her experience from working as a waitress and started to say, okay, if I can work as a waitress, I can be the owner of a restaurant. That's what she had to rely on. You look at, for example, Sheldon Thatcher, who started the legendary Legend Barber Shop. He tells a story that when he was 14, his dad gifted him a pair of clippers. And he then taught himself how to cut hair from the chair and the stoop in his own house. And he used that clippers and the chair to start what is now 74 stores in 5 countries. So you start with what you have. I think it's a big story of what we are learning from entrepreneurs, especially those coming from the township. The second piece, the reason why starting what you have is key is because there's no legacy in the family of being an entrepreneur. You are not taught to be an entrepreneur every day. Nobody discusses business. You don't bump into an entrepreneur tomorrow, a CEO of a business tomorrow. That's far from your own context. So that's why they're starting with what you have is key. The other one is that they debunk the idea that you take risk. We were taught many times that entrepreneurs are risk takers, and we take it to the top of just they go for it without thinking. What the theory tells us is that they don't do that. They calculate the risk. Absolutely. If they say, can my hands, with a little bit of my savings, get me to the next point of my business? And that's what they do. And so don't allow, and that's why the point that was mentioned earlier on by the general manager of the business school is the fact that entrepreneurship, we've got a lot of it in the township, and it's just not translating into the corporations that are registering in the stock exchange. It is because a lot of them do not have the education to take it forward, do not have the know-how of doing so. So they're just simply in the cycle of survivalism. We are saying if we educate them, they're most likely to move on to the next stage. But the third part about the framework is, for me, very interesting. It says, it's called the lemonade principle. It means that the entrepreneur is likely to hit roadblocks. They have to hit roadblocks for them to wake up. Zwane, for example, one of the biggest roadblocks that she had to face was the fact that she was running an establishment and it was taking too long to get a liquor license. And every time she ran the shop, the cops will come, confiscate the stuff and go. The challenge that Zwane was experiencing was not because she didn't want to be compliant, was that our regulation did not make provision for the type of business she was introducing. So the liquor license was either a shebeen or a restaurant. And she was in the middle of those two. She didn't want to be a shebeen. That's not who she saw herself as. But also maybe at the maturity level of the business, she didn't see herself as a restaurant. She said, I just want to bring people and let them have meat. I'm not a restaurant. But now she can tell you that she's a restaurant. So, but at that moment, she was trying to get the organizations to understand, and she eventually got the license. But again, that lemonade provided her with, how do I take this lemon and convert it to lemonade? Entrepreneurs do exactly that. And then the other piece is about making connections with the right people. So, which is about partnerships. The fourth part of the stage is about entrepreneurs will always look for partnerships, relationships, and engagement, and leverage those as best as they can. In this instance, there's a story here about a lady called Candice Thurston, who partnered with Sobe to establish Candy & Co., a hair brand. She was trying to address the issue of hair when it comes to mostly black hair. So she partnered with Sobe. She said, listen, Sobe, I know you're doing some great stuff, but you're missing this part in your market. Can we work? Can we partner together? And then leverage that partnership to deliver a business that was sold for millions to Clicks and other organizations. And then maybe the last one is with the partnership, with the calculated risk, with starting what you have, with converting making a lemon into lemonade, the lemon into lemonade. Then the next thing is to just get going. And most of the time when they get going, they're likely to disrupt or pioneer. Zwane looks at herself as a pioneer of an industry called Shisanyama. Sheldon Thatcher will look at himself and saying, I am the first person to run a chain of barbershops in the continent and make it acceptable to charge a premium price in both urban and non-urban areas. 5 countries, and he's got a vision to really go into the rest of the continent. Again, pioneering, shifting the industry from one direction to the other. That's really the essence of it. So as somebody who's thirsts for knowledge and understand academic principles, you'll find that chapter exciting.
Excellent summation of now the more academic theory behind it. I mean, to go back to you, Zwane, you know, the experiences that you have, how do you resonate with some of the theory, academic theory? Can you give us an example, for instance, where you've been able to have a challenge that you've been able to overcome, or maybe your partnership and collaboration? I know when you started the business, it actually was a container, and you were almost like a franchisee of a container business. Could you speak a bit about some of these lessons and give us the stories behind them?
Okay. It's the two main lessons at the beginning, or stories that I would like to share. Number one, like what Dr. Zwane was saying with the liquor license, that one became a huge challenge, because how then do you run a business that is either a restaurant or a shipping without a liquor license? Even though you know that this product that is Township grown, people love it. They come, you know, like talking about the container, you would see those exotic cars parking in front of a container in the township, and you know, you can see these the people, they are not staying in the township, but then they don't want to be found at the end of the day having, you know, beverages in an unlicensed space. So it became a priority for me to get a liquor license. So in Gauteng, the example that I would use there, it was then in 2003 when the Proclamation Act, and that was a policy, because you know what, there were many fly-by-nights at the time that were offering, you know, to help us how to get a liquor license. I parted with a lot of money getting from one consultant to another, and nothing happened. Until that Proclamation Act of 2003, allowing small businesses to get temporary liquor license for an 18-month period, whilst we are being helped by the department in how to make sure you get a liquor license, and how do you see that that's a correct one, a legitimate one. So finally that one was then addressed. But it was on radio stations. I have to mention this, because they went out to say, where can people access the information? Good as it is to have the policy, but how are people going to know about it? So it was a lot of radio station and the newspapers. And that's how I overcame that one. And then the second biggest challenge, you are at the container, but that 18 months allowed me to operate even if it was not a business zoned space.
Yes.
Because it was then in between what I was saying, shipping and the tavern. But later, then the business grew. Obviously, people loved the concept of Shisanyama. It was talking to exactly who they are, you know, when it comes to experience. Then I wanted to grow the business. Then the second challenge, you are operating literally on the side of the road, because it was a corner by the robot. That's one of the beauty with businesses in the township, though that's the advantage. But there are other advantages as well, disadvantages. The fact that they automatically, you know, growing an economic hub, it's something that just happens automatic. It doesn't matter where you are. You will then find out later when you want to formalize the business that actually this is a residential property. You can't do that. That's the challenge I came across. So I had to buy properties that were behind the container, 3 of them. I started RDPs, yes, thank you, Yamo, and started the entire process of having to rezone, you know. And whilst rezoning, it was also town planning. Even if you rezone, some of the, you know, the width, they are so small that a truck cannot turn, because it was never designed to be a business. So people like Khoza went through all that, you know, those processes to show that, you know what, but I don't want to move from here. I don't want to find another space. And eventually, you know, with the getting it to be business zoned, we was approved. And well, with that challenge, now happy. That's number 2. I've jumped that hiccup. And then the third one, now it's finance. I want to grow the business.
Yeah,
I want something that will take me back to my roots. I want something that will take customers back to where they grew up, you know, having proper shisanyama around the fire, you know, where our way of celebrating, you know. So I was clear about that. But then when you go to the finance institutions, which were banks back then, because remember, almost Zwane are the second generation of black entrepreneurs in South Africa. The first one are the ones that, you know, were there before the democratically elected government. It's now with the second one. Most of them that are here after me are the third generation, because they are now, you know, looking up to us. And with having to go to the bank, you can imagine sitting there telling them about Ushisanyam, and they're looking at you, what? What are you talking about? And you say, no, it's bride that I want to do. Buy and bride. No, not buy and bride. I want something that is, you know, can just sell the experience, something that can attract the tourists, something that, you know, people, we're tired of having, we don't want to have plates. We want to have one big dish and have, you know, pap, meat, and we have our kind of sauces. And something I want to, you know, to grow, because they could already see from the container that, but this business is doing well, such that they had to, my bank manager back in the days, had to drive to go to the township to actually see that, is this
a real thing?
something else that this woman is, this young lady, because I was young back then,
You're still very young.
is not telling us. But or maybe in a nutshell is that they bought into my vision. They finally said, okay, let's give it a try.
Yes.
And then eThekwini was built. All those 3 houses had to be demolished, and we had to put a famous eThekwini. Something that when people come from, you know, overseas, when they got off the airport. And funny when I put me, because Ushisanyama basically says in South Africa, anyone, it doesn't matter where the airport or where someone is coming from the rest of the African continent or even overseas, the minute they say, we want to go somewhere where we'll have an African
authentic,
experience, an authentic stuff, they think of Ushisanyama.
Yeah.
And whenever that happens, of course I do say,
Congratulations.
so those are the main 2 challenges.
Thank you very much. And I think these are important lessons. You know, if we are going to envisage the townships and the rural areas from being basically labor centers and residential areas, we need to think about the town planning and the zoning. We need to think about the infrastructure that's required to support these businesses. We need to think about the financing and whether it's available. And so I think these are key lessons and opportunities for us to collaborate and partner together to solve these issues. At this juncture, I'd like to open up for 2 questions from the audience to bring them in onto the conversation. Unfortunately, we're short on time, so we can't have a large amount of questions, but then we will have an opportunity after the session to network. Please raise your hands if you'd like to make a comment or question, and then we'll invite you. I see 2 hands there. So the gentleman first, and then the lady behind. Please introduce yourself first, and then make your comment or question. Please introduce yourself first, and then.
My name is Max. I'm working one of the state-owned entities here in KZN. So, and it's very close to SMEs. So, why doing business in township is still a viable option in an event when your business at any stage is under threat of being looted, where you are confronted by people, karaoke people who will come willy-nilly and ask something called protection fee, in an environment where you are not guaranteed water and electricity, in an environment where from going to Township is not that I'm sending myself into dens where I'm going to find it difficult to swim above the water. Secondly, I think entrepreneurship is underrated. Is it not perhaps the time to promote the entrepreneurship perhaps at a bit later at the stage? Young people at 22, they are being told to coordinate factors of production and make them work, and that's not a child's play. Chances, I'm likely to tell a 22-year-old to say, go and find a niche space where you will first, these days, the people, renewable energy engineers, go there, do that, then later on, we'll find working space, and then it's where now you can start a business. So the failure rate of 80% every 2 years is exactly that, where people are willingly told at 22 with a junior degree to start a business. So to me, I think the messaging needs to perhaps shift a bit. And then the last one, Chairperson, without taking a lot of your time. I think in my view, that is more of a policy issue. I want the insight from the panelists to say, is it not better to advocate for a township chamber of commerce instead, to advocate the issues of business people there, and then advocate the disbandment of what is called a small business department? Those people can't even tell you the stats of how many people are running what you call hardware NIMLAs. They will tell you go to statistics. It's a department that is existing by name, but advocating the chamber of commerce that are going to be assisted and then to advocate the issues at local level and then have that formal structure, report to the relevant structure and everything, assisted by the big chamber of commerce as well, which are more organized.
No, thank
But
you.
The small business development,
We've captured your point. Thank you for those excellent questions and comments. One more question, and then we'll take a response from the panelists. You're just having some difficulties with the sound.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the insights and some of the points. He's already mentioned them, the gentleman that just spoke. My name is Gukuletu Matubatuba from Nozulu Holistic. It's the company that I've started, which deals with natural herbs, 100% organic. I sell CMOS, ashwagandha, elderberry. Those are products that we find difficulties in Township. I actually need help in terms of those products, like health department, under health department. How can we be assisted in a township where we want to grow that type of business? As Mam Zwane has mentioned, the difficulties you get with the shipping or restaurant, you find difficulties in licensing, or to get a liquor license. And on our side, we actually find it difficult to actually pass our products in the health department. We're facing those difficulties. What can I do in order, or where can I go in order to be assisted in getting a license for health products?
Thank you very much to our audience for those very important questions and comments. I want to start off with you, Stephen and Yamkela. The point that's made about, when do we start teaching entrepreneurship? Is it too late when we say to somebody at 22 years old, all of a sudden you can be an entrepreneur, and people are seeing it as an alternative, for example, to formal education, and where should the interventions be placed? Yamkela and Stephen.
Am I on? Thank you. I'm not sure if I'm on. Okay, thanks. So at Blank Page Box, we are also busy with a series of kiddies books that focuses on financial literacy for
Wow.
children. We are now completing book 2 and book 5 of that series. Book 1 is already out there. Book 2 to book 5 we are completing is going to be out at the end of this month, and we are continuing with the series. We're probably going to end at book 10 or book 15, I don't know, because the topic of entrepreneurship is so broad. And so I'm not sure where we're gonna start. And I'm mentioning that to say that for us, the topic of entrepreneurship needs to start from a young age, right? And this is because it avoids a lot of problems that as adults we find ourselves in, especially in terms of healthy money habits, right? And if we are having these conversations with our children at our dinner tables or around the fire or wherever we are with our children, when we start to have these conversations with them at a young age, it produces entrepreneurs that in the future they are not scared to get into this big world of entrepreneurship, right? If you look at the entrepreneurs in the book, almost all of them, they started seeing entrepreneurship at a young age at home. Zwane, for example, she sold amagwinya, nama sandwiches. In primary, you know, so makaya eskolweni, it was a school bag, ngapha it's Captain Samagunya that she's gonna sell at school. This is, and probably at that time, the parents were not thinking, I am teaching my child entrepreneurship, but that's when she got it. So later on in life, when she realized, look, I need to do something with my life, and this job, finding a job is proving to be hard, she was able to fall back to what she saw being done at home. I think all of us have got, so for example, myself, my parents never worked for anyone. My dad is a self-employed electrician. My mom was selling lamtutu on the streets, you know. For those who don't know what is lamtutu is chickens on the streets. And that's, so when I started working for other companies, I just knew that I'm not going to end up here. I'm going to end up in entrepreneurship myself. Almost everyone, Tutugo, same thing. He went he sold some things at school as well. And so the answer for me is we start as young as we can, especially in the economy that we have in this country. We cannot afford to say, first go to school, then go to university, then you can start entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship can be started at any stage and at any level. You don't have to start big. You can start with biscuits, like Ntutugo started with biscuits when he was at school, and here he is right now running livestock wealth.
Thank you. Stephen, I'll come back to you. Zwane, the issue of having institutions based in the township to support small businesses. So as opposed to having a department of small business which is based in Pretoria, having a Chamber of Commerce or other support institutions. Do you have experience with that, and what would be your response to that question?
Yes, I actually liked what he said about that. You know, even Township Stock Exchange, because entrepreneurs in the township, the minute it's in town, the minute it's 15 kilometers away from where they are, they first think of the time that they're going to take to go there. And yet when the institutions, they get, it's live feedback. Everything that is happening in the township, they can see it. Those institutions can address the issues of e-compliance. Like what you were saying again, to say when you run the business in the township with all the challenges, neimali patalwayo, you know, for safety. It's true. But then if you look at it, if compliance and bylaws are addressed and are attended to, I don't think we'll be facing those kind of challenges, because it's so easy for one person running a formal, having shifted from informal to a formal business, but then they become many other businesses similar to that particular business that is already compliant and that is, you know, paying taxes and everything. And those other small businesses that are around, they affect this big one. So it's all the issues that they will be seeing right in front of them, and people will basically say entrepreneurs are in the township. I can only take 45 minutes, even if the institutions are in the township, and to go and, and tell the challenges, and they can easily be addressed. If there is one big township in Daba, it's one day or 2 days a year where the real township issues in business that is being faced by entrepreneurs can be addressed. So I think that's a brilliant idea.
Thank you. And lastly to you, Stephen, you want to comment on either of those two issues, the issue of when to start and the issue of the institutions, including if you've come across any support mechanisms for licensing of businesses and meeting standards that are required, for example, by the Department of Health or other departments.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks for the questions that you raised. I'm going to maybe start with your first one to say, does it make sense to have a business in the township? I just want to tell you that it makes a lot of sense. Those who are daring are making a living out of businesses in the townships. The townships remains the refuge for a number of black people that are in our economy. And also, townships are starting to be very self-sufficient. Mechanisms have been built for townships to be self-sufficient. That's why they want all their services in and around them. And they're looking to local entrepreneurs to be able to service them. And to a certain extent, a lot of the services that people in the township are consuming are coming from entrepreneurs, especially the ones that are creating the type of businesses on the sites. But also they are maturing with time. The type of businesses that are being established is no longer the food and beverage that we all used to know. Now we're owning pharmaceutical companies are coming in there. There's a lot of other businesses that are starting and coming. So I think for me, I want to say if you're in the township and you think you've got an opportunity, go for it. You're standing in the shoulders of many giants like the Zwanes of this world. If you read their chapter and understand the obstacles that they've overcome, you don't have to ask that question. In fact, if you look at what Zwane mentioned about the liquor license, the issue of formalizing spaza shops should have happened long time ago. It only happens now. It's a similar story as what happened with the liquor license back in 2003. So to a certain extent, a lot of people are finding livelihoods in the township, and we need to grow those. COVID-19 have confirmed to a number of people that you can work from home. And a lot of people want to work from home in the townships where they were born, where they were raised, and where a lot of things are happening. So the second question, but maybe to close that question, we are saying in this book, a lot of people who are entrepreneurs that are building thriving businesses that are black, a number of them trace their roots to the townships. The businesses could be anywhere in the world, but whatever they learned, making do with less than what they normally would make do with, finding spaces where there are limited resources, have taken them to far higher spaces. So that's why we say they are rising, not operating in the township. So that's a good thing. But also we are giving a lot of data set for those that are operating in the township. We've got 2 entrepreneurs who are still operating businesses in the townships. So to be able to bring that, in fact, 3 of them. Then the second question that you ask about entrepreneurship is underrated. I think it's our mindset as a country and as a people that we've always been told that the only way out is a job. And therefore, we raise our kids telling them they must find a job, get an education, find a job. And now those jobs that we promised the young people are no longer there. And then the young person is looking at you and say, okay, where do I find a job? So we are saying, let's go back and just teach them in high school that entrepreneurship can be a choice, can be a career option for them, so that we don't find them making too many mistakes later on without knowing that entrepreneurship starts with the mind. It's a way of being. And there are 3 key elements to entrepreneurship that I just want to learn. Number 1 is that I would like anybody in this room to take it upon themselves that you've got knowledge, expertise. You can teach somebody to be entrepreneurial. Make it your own option and say, I want to teach somebody. So that we can all embrace entrepreneurship education as a thing. And then we say to people, it's just a mindset, solve the problem. find a solution, make do with what you have. Tell them that. The second piece is that let's give them skill sets on entrepreneurship. If at all you can bring a young person into your business, let them see what it takes to run a business, so that they don't have a preconceived idea that if I run a business, I'm going to be rich tomorrow. So that they understand it takes time, that it's hard work, and that it requires deep from you as a person, and that there are failures that must be overcome with regards to that. The third piece is around, let's be kind to entrepreneurs. I think our policies, our systems, our corporate attitude towards entrepreneurs is always pegged at the top end of the economy. And that is why we have a lot of people at the bottom end that are struggling to make ends meet, because we're not kind to entrepreneurs. If a Zwane tells you, I'm trying to run a Shisanyama, you're looking at them through the lens of, are you a checkers? Are you a pick and pay? Don't waste my time. But before you were a checkers and a pick and pay, you were a small time business. Before you were registered in the stock exchange, you're a small business. I just want you to be kind to entrepreneurs in this regard. And maybe the last piece on the policy side, I will stay away from a policy for now and get our people to understand that entrepreneurship is an emergency that we need to be using immediately to address our youth unemployment. If we don't do that now, we will run a country that will have unemployed graduates exceeding the current 12%. And now, if at all, I mean, you are in the room here, you probably know your young person who finished matric, and there are not enough spaces for them to go to school because there aren't enough universities, and then what do you do with them? They're looking at you and saying, you said I must go to university, I must study, I got good marks, but I can't go to university, what do I do? You have no clue what to do with them. How do you then give them a book like this and say, listen, read these stories, here's the workbook complete. Let me know which story inspired you the most. Yesterday, just to close, I know this is time bound. Yesterday, I was at a barber shop to prepare myself to look good for this session. So the barber is a barber I've been cutting hair with. I met him when he was employed, and then when he went into a partnership, and now is a standalone barber. And he says to me, South Africa is not from South Africa. He says, my heart bleeds for South Africans. They don't know how much money we make. But you find their parents come here and say, I don't want you to be a barber. But he says, there's a parent who said this to me 10 years ago. I see his son, he's 24, is trying to find any opportunity. But he said to him, you can't make money here. So which means our mindsets are closed towards creating opportunities. We can address youth unemployment in this country. We can address generational poverty by helping our people to have a mindset of entrepreneurship, by giving them skills, by also being kind to those that are trying to make ends meet in entrepreneurship.
Thank you very much. And on that note, I'd invite us to give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much. So we are going to break for a very brief intermission. We'll start back at 9:35, so just over 5 minutes, so that we can mic up the other panelists and then continue the discussion. Thank you very much. Excited to have to get some of the books and get their books signed. But I need to just let them know that we're starting. Very much, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So we are continuing our profile and celebration of this recent book, Rising from the Township, Inspiring Stories of South African Entrepreneurs by Dr. Stephen Zwane and Yamkela Khoza Tywakadi. In this second shorter panel discussion, we wanted to shift over and start talking about how do we start bridging these gaps. The support that government, and in particular a host of this event, eThekwini Municipality, how are they actually helping to support SMEs. But before we get there, it's my pleasure to welcome another one of the esteemed entrepreneurs who's covered in the book, Mr. Ntuthuko Shezi. Welcome, Ntuthuko, to KZN, and welcome to TWIMS. And then we have Mr. Peter Gilmore from eThekwini and Nonkululeko Mthembu from eThekwini. Welcome, Nonku. So Ntuthuko is the founder and CEO of Livestock Wealth. And before we go on to discussing the topics of the specific support that's being given by eThekwini, Ntuthuko, could you tell us a bit about your story, your background into entrepreneurship? And one of the things that we're asking our panelists to do is to give their KZN credentials for this talk. So just to share also your KZN credentials and your story of entrepreneurship.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. And it's great to be back home. Those are my credentials. So I'm Ntuthuko Shezi, born and bred in Ndwedwe. In fact, my paternal side of the family was in Kangneto, which is Hillcrest, just past Hillcrest. So every school holidays, we always would be shipped off to see grandma, and I would spend a lot of time on this part of town. So Ndwedwe from a rural side, where there was no traffic lights, nothing. And then Kangneto, this side, where it was like almost like a scomplas, halfway between a farm, halfway to a township, somewhere in the middle. So
Very urban.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's where I grew up. I went to Umlazi Comprehensive Technical High School, and then UCT, then Joburg. After years of doing strategy consulting, I was with a firm called Accenture. 5 years, I was like, okay, I'm done with this management consulting thing. I want to start a real business. Then I formed Scratch Mobile, which is a panel beating business. We went door to door fixing cars and scratches on cars, doing minor dents and all that. And we actually opened up in 2009. We got some funding to open up a panel shop in Prospecting. Actually, I was telling Nonku that I actually have a vendor number with the city of Durban. Yeah, so we would fix all the police cars, paint them blue color, and all those cars would fix there. And then, but fast forward, I've always wanted to do work that has got more meaning personally to myself. And for me, Livestock Wealth was saying, how do we get everyone to invest in farming? Because as you all know, if today you have money, a little bit as a teacher or as whatever, it can never be enough to buy a farm. And then you're going to be short on skills as well. As a teacher, not much of farming skills you're going to have there. And then time, even if you try to do it on weekends, it can only be 3 chickens, maybe a few, a few patches of spinach. So created a way of saying livestock becomes this conduit for everyone to be a farmer. So allowing people in the city, in Joburg or wherever, or even in New York as well, to own a cow that is raised in a farm that is managed by a professional. So indirectly, the farmer gets funding from the outside. Like as we speak now, we've got some vegetables growing in Ndwedwe. Some of those owners who are benefiting from those are people sitting in New York and sitting in the US and everywhere else. That's how global our initiative has grown, in that normal banks are not interested in funding agriculture. And we, KZN has got vast tracts of very productive land. You know, in KZN, we could grow orchards galore. We could supply fruits to the world, to any place on earth from these lands we have. But there is no one who's investing there. There's no one who's growing 1,000, 1 million orange trees in Ndwedwe or 2 million banana trees there. So livestock became my solution of saying, okay, if no one is doing it, let me start and get everyone excited about investing in farming. And then we've been able to get some success there, in that over the 10 years we've been in business, we've attracted over 100 million rand odd of investments from anyone in the world, South Africans mostly, of all races, people as far away as France, USA, Canada, even China, as our investors, you know, through our app and investment platform. So that's in a nutshell who we are.
Yeah, so you're one of these stories that isn't necessarily township based, but is emerging from rising from the township. Your
100%.
platform is now
100%. I don't think someone who grew up in a skyscraper in London would have dreamt up of the livestock idea. But me, having grown up in Ndwedwe, really seeing how wealthy our family became, relative wealth, from just a few cattle we kept, a few banana trees that my grandmother kept, how she was able to pay for school fees for my mom, who became a school principal, how she, from just these few agricultural assets that are in the family crop. So as an adult, having studied a few things, varsity and all that, I was like, okay, if this used to work back in the day in the 70s with grandma, with a little education that she never had, let me then use all these skills, which, you know, like livestock combines stock fells, combines shared services, combines tech, combines agri-tech, combines IoT, and all these other things that we're building into say, how do we get someone overseas to trust that, okay, there is a cow in Ndwedwe that I'm a proud owner of, or a cow in Pietermaritzburg or wherever, even places where I've never been. So that's really, I think, without the rural area,
Yes.
it wouldn't have happened.
It inspires the business models. I mean, we were talking earlier about Shisanyama concept. You're now talking about farming, rural livelihoods. So you have the inspiration, and then what I like about what you've done is you now combine it with the modern technology, and creating an app for that. Just briefly, maybe if you can touch on what has been one main challenge that you experienced with the business, and particularly scaling up.
Sure.
You know, from when you started to getting to where you are.
Yeah. So, I think the first major challenge really was trust. You know, like when we started off in 2015, you know, we had a small office at the Innovation Hub in Pretoria. So that gave us some respectability. But people would call like 3 times, the same person. You could hear, okay, I've just spoken to this guy and explained to him everything, how this thing works, and, you know, and you go again to the exactly the same extent. So there was trust. So we knew that trust is an issue. So we wanted to make sure that from day one, we have all the credentials from regulation, which is a bigger thing. But we had to get top tier auditors to make sure that, okay, we had Grant Thornton as our auditors. From the get-go, so that, you know, people understand, okay, that this is not a Mickey Mouse. expensive as it is, and of course, even though we don't need to be audited as a small company, but from a trust perspective, we have to make sure that we spend that 100,000 Rand a year that we don't have on an audit that is not really needed, but as a cost of doing business, you've got to do it. And then secondly, being regulation. I think this point has been touched, especially our business touches across financial services, across agriculture. We've had to, we've also gone down the food production space where we actually took cattle from farm to fork to people's homes directly. So we've had to navigate all those regulatory minefields. And I think even to this day, like when we started, for example, I knocked on the doors of the FSCA or the FSB at the time, and I said, okay, guys, we want to be regulated because, because I was on 702, I think Kolani Gwala asked, who are you regulated by? And then I was like begging the guys, guys, I want to be regulated, so that people can just trust us, because, as black people don't give you the benefit of the doubt when they first see you. You got to just prove yourself 10 times prior to earning trust. So then they said, nah, we don't regulate cows. Because then the next thing is going to be horses and donkeys and dogs.
Yeah.
But then we walked the journey though, eventually we had to actually force ourselves into some form of regulation. So it's okay, at least someone has peace of mind that, okay, I have recourse here, for this thing. So it's discussion that we're still even having to this day with them as well, where they're saying, okay, initially when one started, it was, just cows, and people are, and now we've actually grown to an extent where I think even the bigger companies are saying that this guy started as a joke, that people think, cattle, goats, blah, blah, blah. But now we actually have, through our platform, just last year, we enabled people to buy into a citrus farm that's exporting lemons, oranges, and that's about a 15 million Rand purchase we were able to do.
Yes.
So I think then even the people who thought, these are just Mickey Mouse guys, are really starting to see that these guys are serious. So that's really how and in between there, you're trying to as well constantly find yourself. Where do I fit in? Do I have to do that? Okay, let me do it even though I don't need it.
Yes. It's
costly, but it's just those pains of that no man's land that Zwane was talking about.
It's a niche. It's a niche market.
Yeah.
So part of what motivates you as an entrepreneur is the fact that you can tap into the niche market.
100%.
But the challenges or disadvantages is then you're in a situation where you don't have an established regulatory system that can easily fit into your business.
You're trying to find a box that you fit in. Sometimes you're like, okay, I'm going to have one foot in this left box, and maybe the other foot and a toe on the other. And then you just hope for the best in between. Yeah.
No, and I think that's an excellent. Thank you very much, Tutugo. I think that's an excellent segue then into speaking a bit about the government support measures. We did want to make sure that we don't just say there are challenges without offering some concrete solutions. And so we have colleagues from the municipality who are going to tell us a bit about the programs that they're currently running and the support measures that they have. I want to start with you, Nonko. It's come up now in both discussions, this issue of regulations, how to navigate the regulatory system if you're an SME, either based in the township or inspired by township enterprise, and also the issue of finance, licensing. What kind of support measures are you providing in your capacity as the Deputy Head of SME Development at eThekwini to support these township-based entrepreneurs?
Thank you. Good morning. I'm responsible for enterprise development within the city of eThekwini Municipality. So what we do is the unit, it's got 5 departments. We are responsible for business support. We are responsible for markets. We are responsible for informal trade. We are responsible for tourism. We are responsible for licensing. I'm responsible for SMME development within business support. So the programs that we have every year within the city, actually Ntuthuko is one of our success stories. He started as a mechanic and now he's a prominent farmer. So what we do is, in terms of compliance, is to host workshops, which we do that at ward level. So we go, each year, we seek support from council to go to different wards so that we teach, and we also partner with different people like SARS, like liquor license, CEDA, CIFA, depending on what's topical within that area. So what we need as an SMME, then our support as business support is to come up with, or rather to bring stakeholders that are relevant to your business. So we bring them to workshop you on different requirements that they need. And secondly, in terms of finance, as the city, we do not have finance. That's unfortunate.
I think the ratepayers will be encouraged by that. Money is going to service delivery. I mean,
Yes, we do not have finance that we provide to SMMEs, but how we work as the city or as a department is we partner with various government institutions like CIFA, like CEDA, also various banks, because in as much as banks do provide loans, but they've got the enterprise wing, which most entrepreneurs don't know about. So that enterprise development wing is to assist you as an entrepreneur. You do not, if you apply for funding, you do not get premium rates, but it's a loan that's provided to you as an SMME so that you grow. Another question that you asked about programs, which we work very closely with Peter and Ajiv, our sister departments, to provide incubation. Because once we assist you with getting finance, because sometimes as an SMME, you think you need finance, but actually that's not what you need. Maybe you need business development, you need mentorship, you need a space to work, you need a facility which is fully furnished with every facility that you need. You even need maybe a receptionist. When somebody calls and say, I'm looking for Nonko CC, a professional receptionist will answer the call and say, Nonko is not here at the moment, can I take a message? Then I'll make an appointment for you. So we've got those facilities. One focuses mostly on construction, which is a topical issue within the city, in fact, within the country. Siyawazi amadela ngokubona or the construction mafia, yes. So one of the things that national government regulated was for every contract that is above 10 million, you give 30% to locals. So as business support, we are involved in that. We make sure that locals actually get their slice within that pie. And then also there's mentorship within that. We make sure that we make sure that we do a skills audit to understand what skills are there within that area. Because sometimes the construction might say, we want a slide within this pipe, but they actually don't have the skills.
So rather than having vigilante groups, you can actually
Yes.
have
So
registered, credible businesses.
yes, so we'll do a skills audit, we'll make sure that they comply, and then we will train them. So we've got programs that cut across different sectors, even with the cooperatives, because some businesses like cluster themselves into cooperatives. We've got over 110 million tender as the city that we give to cooperatives each year. So the cooperatives get a contract for 3 years. It could be grass cutting, it could be cleaning streams, it could be office cleaning. So those are the types of programs we have, even for women. As women in business, even though I'm not in business, but as women in business, there are some sectors where we tend to be overlooked, which is not nice, because every time when I get into a meeting, I need to introduce myself. Like, why not? So there are sectors, for example, construction, also technology, where every year we design a program specifically to empower women within that sector. It could be 25 or 30 women that we focus to empower within that financial year. But I was saying Peter provides us with these facilities so that we house SMMEs. And then when we house SMMEs, then we are able to provide support.
I think, yeah, so let's hear a bit more about that, Peter. So thank you very much, Moku. It's quite clear that you have a comprehensive, wide-ranging package of supports, which both includes just collaborating and facilitating that other departments and private sector can support these SMEs, but also your own programs of incubation that you've spoken about. Peter, as the senior project manager in the Economic Development Unit, you focus more on the infrastructure side of things. It's come up in the discussions we had around the challenges, especially in townships and rural areas where these areas are not zoned. In some cases, they don't have the supportive infrastructure to actually support a private enterprise. What kind of support is eThekwini Municipality giving in that regard?
Thank you, Mogeni. I'm with the Economic Development Unit. So we've been involved in townships since 2006, 2008, when we saw the government policy shift especially towards grant funding, being allocated towards townships. And I'm particularly referring to the National Treasury's, the Neighbourhood Development Partnership grant. There's also the USDG grant. So our role is to tap into those grant programs to provide infrastructure, what we call economic infrastructure in townships, with the view of attracting investments into those townships. Now, a lot of it is around town centre developments, in upgrading our township nodes in town centres. With SMMEs, as Nonko said, we have a very successful program, in particular providing economic spaces to entrepreneurs, whether it be incubators or just subsidise affordable spaces for SMEs to run their businesses from. I think some of our success stories lies in Umlazi, where since 2021 we've provided 3 what we call business hives. The Ezekwini Automotive, that taps into providing spaces for entrepreneurs involved in panel beating and mechanics and car repairs, and that's seemed to be running quite well. Komyandu, light industrial, that's providing space for entrepreneurs in the clothing, in the food catering industry, but also office spaces for architects and professional services, where entrepreneurs find it very difficult to find affordable spaces to rent. And we also have the Umlazi Business Hive, which was quite a interesting pilot project, because we built that out of a steel modular frame type of structure at half the price. So we always try to be innovative in providing cost-effective infrastructure, so it allows us to utilize the limited funding that we have to provide more of these spaces. But the key is obviously to provide these spaces in areas where entrepreneurs are able to run their businesses from, and areas where zoning regulations do provide for that. Now in Bridge City, example, where we've kind of as a greenfield development, so we create that space in terms of putting infrastructure there, making sure that the necessary zonings are in place. So when business entrepreneurs come in, all the regulatory processes are already done. The services are there, infrastructure there, they just need to come and invest in their business. I believe building the facilities, that's always the easy part. Okay, obviously, except dealing with the construction mafia, because I'm at the receiving end of them. The challenge is the mentorship, and providing their support to small businesses to allow them to grow. And we have, in some cases, partnered with industry sectors and NGOs. And I'll refer to the Kwamashu Furniture Incubator. Now that's run by Ferntech, where they provide support to startup businesses. Pumalanga Township in Hammersdale, we have an NGO called Use It. They run the Waste Recycling Center, where entrepreneurs are involved in the waste recovery and recycling components. Bridge City, we are now designing the new incubator there that will house a film studio, so that will tap into entrepreneurs involved in the film industry, and also the footwear manufacturing, providing space for those SMEs. But it's really just clustering them together so they can feed off each other and be in a safe environment. So that's the next project that we're currently focusing on.
Excellent. So Peter, is talking about where the municipality has actually put together spaces for entrepreneurs to try and support them. But I think you're giving quite an important challenge to other stakeholders, especially private sector stakeholders in the room, to say, how can you partner with eThekwini to support these businesses, either at an individual level or at an industry association level? Because the big challenge is, the facilities are there, but we need mentorship. And I think Dr. Zwane earlier also talked about the fact that, one of the roles that we need to play as established business is in the realm of giving the skills, giving the mentorship to smaller businesses. So we have unfortunately run out of time for this book launch, but at this point I'd really love to invite the audience to give a round of applause to our second group of panelists for joining us. And then to just make a few announcements. The one is that we had advertised that the first 15 RSVPs would receive free books. We've decided also to extend that generosity to the 2 participants who asked questions or made comments for this event. So I'll just read their names, and they can arrange to fetch their signed books from the book signing desk outside. The names are Nosihle Dlamini, Pilane Mangeni, Masisonke Kokela, Robin van Loren, Atalp Padoga, Simpiwe Mhlongo, Dumiseni Mapumulo, Mohammed Abdullah, Prathna Palada, Pilisiwe Danisa, Gareth Knape, Zazi Mtangai, Doug Engelbrecht, Cendric Hlongwana, Sponiso Zimela, and then those are the 15 who received it based on their RSVPs, and then the 2 that are also going to receive free books who participated in the Q&A. That's Max Zwane and Kukuletu Matumba. I think, excuse me. Congratulations to you. And thank you very much for me. It was a pleasure to moderate both of these panel discussions. I'd like to hand over now to our co-sponsor for the event, eThekwini Municipality, the Deputy Head focusing on Research and Innovation, Dr. Ajiv Maharaj, to make the closing remarks and vote of thanks.
Thank you, Mbongeni. I think that was a really inspiring session, both sessions. And what I liked was that I think you got a sense of both sides of the entrepreneurship story. Most importantly, I like the personal journeys that have been shared through the book. And I think Stephen and Yamkela have done an excellent job in both telling the stories of these enterprises, but also to draw out lessons from them. And I think you've put on your academic cap and you've been able to distill from these personal stories, some real gems that are useful for us as government. So I think that's the first thing. It's an inspiration, but it's also more than an inspiration. It's lessons for us, lessons for other enterprises as well. The other thing for us in partnering in this event that was important, I think, was that it's not the story of an enterprise. It's not about government. It's a very personal journey. Government can foster entrepreneurship, government can support, but it's the individual that becomes the entrepreneur. And I think that was a really important message. And in that journey, there are ways in which government can support. Town planning, yes, Zwane, I think coming with the right zoning, being able to foster entrepreneurship in that way, and also in other ways, providing the tools, providing the skills, that's important for us. So I think there's some really important lessons for us as government. There's important lessons for people that are starting out this journey, the youth. I think there's a lot of inspiring stories, and what stood out for me from all of the stories, I think, is that there was a lot of adversity involved, personal adversity, and out of that adversity came this resilience and a kind of triumph over that resilience. And I think that is an important message. Just to think about my own journey, I'm a government official. My plan when I came into government was to spend 5 years in government and then become a consultant. And 28 years later, I'm still in government. So, but I think it's really valuable insight. I think lastly, for me, it's just to thank all of the people involved. Firstly, TWIMS, Mbongeni, and the team from TWIMS for hosting this session. It's such a beautiful facility and a gem that we have in KZN, and I think it's a secret. It needs to be, we need to broadcast about this facility a lot more. To Stephen and Yamkela, I think a deep appreciation from us, from all of us, for telling the story and coming here to KZN and sharing all of what you've shared with us. The entrepreneurs themselves who've come here to tell their stories and who continue to inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs. I think a sincere word of appreciation to you. To my colleagues at eThekwini, I think really a big thank you for coming and participating in this event. To other entrepreneurs that have come and who will read the book and be inspired by it, a big thank you to them. And then a thank you to all of you who've come here and taken part in this event. And I hope you'll go home with a deeper sense of appreciation for the township economy and the struggle of entrepreneurs. Thank you very much.
We will now end this session. There is some refreshments for you, and hopefully you can get to network with the colleagues from both panels, as well as an opportunity to actually purchase the book and get a signed copy from the authors at the book signing desk outside. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.
Time was short.